Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. It was a late fall day, with the trees still colorful, but the rain and gray skies made everything look dull. This matched John Watson's mood. He climbed out of his car and hurried to the saloon door for some shelter. Once inside, he took a seat at the end of the bar. His face showed his worry, looking tired and worn. This week had been tough for him. An instructor in his department had quit unexpectedly, and John knew he would have to find someone quickly to take their place. The 3 interviews he conducted that week went nowhere, and he couldn't picture hiring any of those candidates. To make matters worse, the books he ordered for the student store hadn't arrived yet. Students were becoming frustrated as they realized how much reading they had to do, and they were starting to complain to the school administration. What bothered him the most was his marriage. "Hello, Professor. Good to see you," Chester said quietly while cleaning the bar nearby. "Hi, Chester. Thanks. Can I have a scotch and water? With ice?" Dr. Watson asked, noticing it was just after 4 p.m. "Coming right up," replied Chester as he went to prepare the drink. The drink arrived quickly, and John looked around. His eyes roamed over the dark wooden walls, the old light fixtures hanging slightly askew, and the worn leather of the booths along the side of the saloon. The old place felt welcoming, a retreat he had often visited since he was a graduate student so many years ago. He reminisced about the past. He remembered being a young man finishing his doctorate in American history. His manuscript about Henry Clay had been accepted for publication, and he had been offered a teaching job at the university, even if the pay was not high. All his dreams were coming true. Esther had finished law school the semester before, and had landed a job at a well-respected law firm in the city. They had been living together for the last year, and John felt it was time to make their relationship official. He had saved up to buy an engagement ring. Though the stone wasn't as big as he wished, he told himself it was the thought that mattered. Esther had been happy when he gave it to her, and he felt proud. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Together, their paychecks would help them manage well. They were planning a wedding for the spring. John smiled as he remembered how bright and lively Esther was. His smile faded a little as he thought about a party thrown by her law firm shortly after he proposed. He had never felt at ease around her coworkers, sensing they looked down on his career choice. His discomfort often frustrated Esther, but he tried his best to get along. By around 11 that night, most people at the party had had too much to drink. The atmosphere in the hotel was cheerful, and it looked like people were forgetting their troubles. Only a few senior partners remained sober, concerned about the level of noise and excitement. They sat at a distant table, trying to keep their composure. John noticed A.C. Doyle, a senior partner he actually admired. Doyle respected John's profession and often talked to him at events. But that night, Doyle looked unhappy, eyeing the lively crowd with a serious expression, which made John feel a little anxious. John was always careful not to drink too much. He wanted to avoid the mistakes his father had made with alcohol. Growing up, he had seen how poor choices affected families. He understood that not all of this was the fault of schools. Some parents didn't value education. John had once been one of those troublemakers, and he had turned his life around from being in trouble to becoming an honor student, finally learning to enjoy school. He promised not to let alcohol control his life, which is why he felt out of place at the party. Even Esther, who usually didn't drink much, was a little tipsy. She playfully told him to relax. When the New Year countdown started, John looked for her and found her talking closely with James Moriarty, a fellow lawyer. Feeling concerned, John went over and gently pulled Esther away. He reminded her of their engagement. In response, Moriarty accidentally pushed John, and in a flash, John found himself towering over Moriarty on the floor. This drew everyone's attention. Fuming, Esther slapped John loudly, and in shock, he dropped Esther's engagement ring to the floor, crushing it beneath his foot. Without saying anything, he left the party, feeling a mix of anger and humiliation. Outside, he took deep breaths to calm himself. He knew he needed to go home, pack his things, and leave. He felt Esther had crossed a line. Once home, He quickly filled 2 suitcases and looked around at their life together, feeling downhearted that he had so little to show for their time. Now that he was calmer, he realized this wasn't just an argument. It went much deeper and made him question their relationship. Trust was broken. He knew he could no longer rely on Esther to respect him. Soon he found a room at a nearby Holiday Inn, considering his options for housing as a university staff member. He understood he had a lot to think about regarding Esther, but deep down, he worried their relationship was over. He was smart enough to recognize that he was currently filled with anger and embarrassment. It wasn't the best time to think clearly about the situation. Being away from her, even for a little while, would give John the space he needed to think things through. The next few days rushed by as he got busy with the new term. He kept ignoring calls from Esther and didn't want to talk to her. He felt too hurt from their last disagreement. Still, he missed her a lot and wondered if he might be overreacting to what was probably just a misunderstanding, though deep down he wasn't sure. With that on his mind, he drove to the Fairmont Country Club for lunch with A.C. Doyle. It had been 2 weeks since the party, and John had moved out of his apartment around that time. Yesterday, Art Doyle had invited him to lunch at his club. John tried to say no, but Mr. Doyle wouldn't let him, so he reluctantly agreed. He had a feeling he knew why they were meeting, but he did his best to keep an open mind. As he entered the bright dining room, John saw Doyle sitting in a cozy spot by the windows. He walked over, and Doyle stood up with a warm smile. "Hello, John. Thank you for coming," he said, reaching out his hand. John shook his hand and replied, "Thanks, Mr. Doyle. Good to see you again," although he didn't sound very excited. Doyle smiled gently. "Please, call me Art. I want you to consider me a friend." "Of course, Art. I have a lot of respect for you," John said as they took their seats. They made small talk while enjoying a light lunch. As their table was cleared and their coffee cups were filled, Art looked at John fondly. "John, I think you can guess why I invited you. Besides enjoying your company, I want to talk about Esther. Please just listen for a moment, okay?" John sighed and nodded. He knew this conversation was coming and in fact was somewhat ready for it. Maybe Art could help them find a way back to each other. Art smiled, sensing John's willingness to listen. "First, I need to say that the firm owes you an apology. Things got out of hand at the party. The staff has been talked to about it. Also, I want you to know that Moriarty has been reassigned to another office because of what happened. His actions were known to many, and it was clear we needed to act." John raised an eyebrow. So this wasn't just a one-time thing, he thought silently, wondering what else might have happened that Esther hadn't shared. Art noticed John's concern. "John, I understand your worries. I looked into this, and you don't need to be concerned. His actions never went beyond that night. I've talked with Esther a few times, and she's really struggling. She's not in a good place and can't focus on work. I like her, and I like you too, and I don't want this situation to ruin your relationship. You both care about each other, and it's time to talk things over." John sighed, understanding Art's point. "I know. I've calmed down enough to have a sensible talk with Esther. I guess I should call her." Art smiled broadly. "No need for that, John. Esther is waiting for you at her apartment this evening for dinner. But please don't worry. I know you will handle this wisely." John smirked slightly. "All right, Art. Tell her I'll come, but not for dinner. I'll get there around 8 so we can sit down over coffee and talk. And thank you. You've been a good friend." That evening, John and Esther spoke for nearly 2 hours. At first, Esther was nervous, fidgeting and looking down at her coffee. John stayed quiet, patiently waiting for her to speak first. He hoped they could work things out by being honest about what had happened, but John also believed Esther needed to take responsibility for the situation. Eventually, Esther looked up at John, her eyes glistening. "John, I owe you an apology. I don't know why I acted that way. I'm ashamed, and I hope you can forgive me." John nodded slowly. "I understand, but that doesn't take away the hurt. You have to realize your choice impacted both of us. Do you see how that made me feel? If this is what I have to look forward to, then I'm not sure we should continue." Esther's face turned pale. "No, John, please, I love you. Don't let this one moment ruin what we have." John responded softly. I don't want to be too strict, but we need to be clear about our expectations. If we're going to be married, we need to agree on what love means. By the end of their talk, Esther apologized again and promised not to drink too much in the future, though John wondered what she would consider too much. He also apologized for losing his temper, even though he felt justified. Their discussion covered trust and loyalty. The next day, John moved back to his apartment, and after some time, things slowly returned to normal. Interestingly, John never bought an engagement ring, and Esther never asked for one. They married in the spring as planned, and their marriage was strong. They truly loved each other, but a few years into their marriage, they found out John was unable to have children. They talked about other ways to start a family, but eventually accepted it would just be the two of them. Surprisingly, Esther didn't seem as upset as John had feared. He noticed her tearful nights but saw that she found comfort in her work and their relationship. John blinked, looking around in surprise, realizing he had been lost in thought for a while. He felt relieved when he glanced at the clock and saw that only a few minutes had passed. He noticed his drink was empty and thought for a moment about getting another. Deciding to go for it, he signaled to Chester, and soon there was a fresh drink in front of him. John thought fondly of Art Doyle, feeling a wave of sadness about his recent passing. A.C. Doyle and Lee Lestrade, the younger partner, were the only two at the law firm he had really connected with. Lee had joined the firm about 10 years ago and had quickly become a good friend, starting from one of their company gatherings. John admired that Lee wanted to be a teacher like him and was grateful that he was in good health. Suddenly, thoughts of his wife crossed his mind, making him frown slightly and deepen the lines on his face. Their 20th anniversary was coming up, but the uneasiness he felt about their relationship overshadowed what should have been a happy time. He couldn't figure out what was happening. After nearly 2 decades of love, things had changed. It had happened slowly, so he hadn't noticed until recently, but now it was clear that they had both become distant. Little disagreements and the lack of affection had become everyday occurrences. Reflecting on the past few months, John finally recognized that real issues had entered their marriage. He felt stuck, unsure how to talk to Esther or what steps to take to improve things. John understood why he felt hesitant. He knew how sharp Esther could be, and he didn't want to start another heated argument. Has it really gotten so bad that I can't even talk to her? He wondered. Just then, he heard a soft voice beside him. Hey, buddy, buy a girl a drink? He turned a bit and saw Irene at his side, which made him smile. Renee, what are you doing here? You're the last person I expected to see. I stop by every few weeks, John, just for old time's sake. Order a gin and tonic for me. I'll be right back, she said, heading to the restrooms. John watched her with a fond smile, admiring her confidence. Dr. Irene Adler, a striking woman in her late 30s, was more than just attractive. Tall and fit, with shoulder-length dark hair and bright brown eyes, she stood out in any crowd. Now the assistant chair of the Drama and Performing Arts Department, she had excelled as the first in her family to attend university. She and John had been friends since their graduate days, and he and Esther had supported her through 2 divorces and many relationships. John considered Irene his closest friend and valued their bond greatly. Soon she returned and sat down next to him. Picking up her drink, she said, "Okay, Johnny, what's the trouble? Why do you think there's a problem, and what's this about you stopping by? I'm sure you rarely come here," John replied, though his tone was light. Irene laughed and took a sip. "All right, Sherlock. I saw that car of yours outside while driving by and wondered why you were here. So I stopped to check if it was really you. Happy?" John looked at her warmly. There was no hidden motive. He genuinely valued Irene and trusted her, which is why he felt comfortable sharing his worries. He opened up about his confusion concerning his marriage. Irene could sense the frustration behind his words and placed her hand on his arm for comfort. After sharing his feelings, John paused, feeling drained but relieved. He realized he needed to talk about this, and there was no one better to confide in than Irene. Listening attentively, Irene felt deep sadness for what her friend was facing. John had always been good at hiding his emotions, so it was surprising for her to see how troubled he really was. Although she didn't have any solutions, she believed that John and Esther's love was strong and that something had gone wrong. "John," Irene said gently, "try to look at this in a clear way. What you're describing sounds like a buildup of small issues. There must be a cause for this, but it seems you're focusing on the symptoms. Have you done something that upset Esther? Has she done something to upset you? I can't believe it just happened without a reason." John shook his head. "I don't know, Renee. I can't seem to point to anything specific that's happened lately. It feels like we just drifted into this situation and I don't know how to fix it." "Maybe you should just talk to her, John. Why not have an honest conversation? It could be that simple," Irene suggested softly. "We've tried. Every calm conversation turns into an argument, with her accusing me of overthinking, and I lose my patience. It just isn't working," John replied, his voice trailing off. That same afternoon, in another part of town, Esther Watson was leaning back in her office chair, watching the tall, blond man sitting across from her. She regarded him openly, not hiding her assessment. Esther had a slight smile on her face, aware of Jim Moriarty's intentions. He had been trying to win her over for months, but she had managed to keep her distance. "He's still charming," she thought. "But I won't go any further. There's no way I'm risking my marriage, not that it feels strong right now." That thought turned her smile a bit bittersweet. "Jim," she said, "it's been months since you returned, and it's clear you haven't changed at all. You're still the same relentless flirt. Why not marry again? Then you won't have to chase so much," Moriarty joked. "I'm just being friendly. Why take that so defensively? You're beautiful, and any real man would appreciate that. Your husband seems more focused on his work than on you, and you know I'm right." Esther bit her lip and looked away. Moriarty's words struck a nerve. She knew their relationship was growing distant, and his casual comments didn't help. She realized that her own responses weren't helpful either, often turning into jokes about his job. What once felt playful now felt hurtful. "Maybe I should have told John that Jim came back here," she thought quietly. "I didn't want to open that topic again. I just hoped not telling him wasn't a mistake." She brought her focus back to Moriarty. "Look, Jim, let's not go there. My home life is off limits. Just leave it alone." Moriarty smiled. "All right, S. Just remember, I'm always here for you. You know you have a friend in me." "Yeah, a real friend," Esther replied, forcing a smile. "I know what you're after, Jim. Please focus on your work. We need to finish the Simmons contract," said Esther. Moriarty chuckled as he stood up and leaned over the desk, lightly brushing her lips before she could respond. He then turned and left, humming to himself. Esther sat quietly, taking deep breaths as she felt a rush of emotions from that brief touch. She wondered how long it had been since her husband had shown her affection. Is this where all my friendly moments with Jim will lead? Am I really considering something more? She thought, trying to dismiss those thoughts. Just then her phone rang. It was Stan Hopkin, one of the senior partners. "Hey, S, you're wrapping up the Simmons contract, right?" he asked. "Yes, Stan," she replied. "It's been a big project for months now. What's up?" "Well, you two will need to fly up to see him on Monday. He can't come here, and he wants it finished then." "But it's Friday. We'll need to come in tomorrow to finish everything. Jim and I are the only ones on this." "I know, Essie. I'll arrange some help for you tomorrow, but we might have to stay late. I can't make it tonight, so let's come in early tomorrow, and you and Jim should be able to finish by the end of the day. I'll let him know as soon as we hang up." Esther replied with a weak okay. She felt uneasy about this news and dreaded how John would react. He had been expressing concerns about her workload, and she feared it would create another argument. She had been putting her career first, and deep down she hoped it wouldn't lead to a bigger problem. After this project, they could spend more time together, maybe even take that long-delayed vacation. She had been a bit snappy with him lately over small things. She promised herself to change once this project was done. Meanwhile, in his office, James Moriarty leaned back in his chair with his feet on the desk, smiling to himself. He was aware of Esther's challenges and thought that over time she might lean on him for support. He remembered how he felt the last time he had a conflict with her husband. His career had taken a hit then, but now he was back and determined to make his mark. As the weather turned colder, John was eager to get home. He felt disappointed finding the house dark when he drove in. Just great, he thought to himself, realizing it would be another late night for Esther. He noticed her car next to his and decided to wait by the door. "Hi, sweetie," she called out cheerfully when she arrived. "Look, we got home at the same time. Let's freshen up, and I'll take you out to dinner. Somewhere nice tonight?" "Sweetie? Honey?" John wondered to himself, feeling uneasy. Esther seemed too happy, and something felt off. It wasn't typical for her to switch from quiet to almost overly affectionate so suddenly. Deciding to go along with it, he hoped to find out what she was really thinking. Despite his concerns, they enjoyed a lovely dinner, chatting with what felt like genuine warmth. John realized he should pay more attention to his wife. As he looked at her more closely, he felt a pang of guilt. She was still a charming woman. Maybe both of them had contributed to the issues in their relationship. So John decided to make an effort to improve things, as long as Esther did too. They both had to be willing to work on their marriage. Esther noticed John seemed more relaxed and open. A wave of warmth washed over her, and she felt grateful to have him. She promised herself to also work on their relationship. On the way home, she leaned into John, and when they parked, they entered a warm living room where John had started a fire. They poured glasses of wine and soft music played. Before long, Esther knew she had to tell John about her work plans for the next day, including the trip on Monday. She worried about how he would take the news and bit her lip, trying to find the right words to avoid upsetting him. In the end, she felt it was best to tell him sooner. "Honey, I have good news. We're almost done with this project, and then we can get back to a normal life. I know things have been tough, but it will be finished in a few days. I've got to go into work tomorrow to finalize everything, and then the meeting is on Monday." "I don't need to know more, Esther," John interrupted, his tone sharp. "It's obvious your job is more important to you than our marriage. You don't have to explain. I've heard it all before." He turned to leave the room. Before heading upstairs, he glanced back to see her sitting there, tears welling in her eyes. "Think about what you truly want, Essie. Take some time to consider it this weekend. I'll do the same," he said, then went upstairs feeling overwhelmed. It took John a while to drift off to sleep that night as his mind raced. Esther woke early, dressed quickly, and styled her hair in a ponytail. Grabbing her briefcase, she left without breakfast, eager to avoid John after their earlier conversation. She focused on completing her work project, putting her marriage worries on hold. John woke late in the morning, feeling tired and realizing he had lost track of time. Going through his routine, he noticed the kitchen was untouched. Esther hadn't even made coffee. He sat at the table, resting his head in his hands with an incomplete cup before him. A headache throbbed, and he felt a moment of regret. He realized he had snapped at Esther and that he had been sharp with her for months, which he couldn't quite understand. He acknowledged that she had seemed frustrated with him too, leading to misunderstandings. John began to reflect on the past few months, trying to understand the growing distance in their relationship. He couldn't identify one specific moment. It felt like their bond had faded quietly. "What has happened? Why are we so at odds? It's as if the love we shared has slowly slipped away." He shook his head, determined not to let their marriage slip further away without trying. Despite their challenges, he loved Esther and was determined to fix them. He promised to handle their issues with patience and kindness. His mind drifted back to dinner the night before, and a small smile appeared. He realized he truly cared for his wife, and last evening showed that their connection was still strong. He winced at how he had reacted poorly to her news about working that day and her upcoming trip. He knew he shouldn't have lost his temper. He realized that now. Looking at his watch, he saw it was past 11 a.m. An idea struck him. He would surprise Esther at work and see if she could have lunch with him. He wanted to rekindle their love, starting with being more understanding and caring. He knew her job was demanding and he should have been more supportive. He nodded to himself, thinking this was a good plan. If he became a better husband, Esther would likely respond positively. On his way to his wife's office, John was humming when he felt the familiar bump of a flat tire. Frustrated, he pulled into a diner parking lot nearby. Accepting the delay, he called for roadside assistance. They said it would take 30 minutes to an hour to arrive. Shrugging, he decided to grab a quick meal at the diner. Lunch with Esther would have to wait, and he was relieved he hadn't called ahead. As he entered the diner and moved toward a booth, he heard his name called. Looking around, he saw Lee Lestrade, a senior partner at Esther's law firm, sitting alone. Lee waved him over. "John, what a nice surprise. Please join me. I haven't ordered yet." John smiled as he sat across from Lee. "Good to see you, Lee. What brings you here on a Saturday? Isn't Emily upset? You work hard during the week." "My wife is out of town visiting a friend. I had to run to the office for a file and decided to stop here for a bite. I'm not great in the kitchen. Emily laughs at my cooking skills." "What about you, John? Is this a usual spot for you?" "Nope. I was going to see if Esther wanted to grab lunch, but I got a flat tire and they won't be here for about an hour. There go my good intentions." He chuckled. "Don't worry. Esther and Jim are almost done with their project. Once they return, we can all celebrate." "Jim?" John asked, a hint of curiosity in his voice. "I don't remember Esther mentioning anyone by that name." "Jim Moriarty. He transferred to the main office when the branch he was at closed. He's been here about 6 months. I'm surprised Esther hasn't mentioned him to you. They've been working on this project together," Lee said, signaling the server, unaware of the worry that was growing in John's mind. John felt a knot in his throat and his stomach churn. A wave of emotion washed over him, but he stayed calm. "I guess I haven't paid enough attention, Lee. At times it feels like Esther and I live in different worlds." He forced a smile, but felt it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, we all have those moments. Sometimes I need to remind myself to listen to Emily," Lee said with a laugh. John struggled to keep calm as he ate his meal and chatted with Lee. His thoughts raced, but he worked to keep his feelings in check. His heart raced, and he could feel sweat on his brow. When he spotted the roadside assistance truck arriving, he quickly excused himself and left. John drove home almost on autopilot. When he reached his garage, he realized he didn't remember the drive at all. Taking a deep breath, he stumbled into the house. His mind was chaotic, and he felt a deep sense of loss. He knew he needed to sort through his thoughts, but he couldn't concentrate. "Esther is seeing someone else," his mind insisted. "You're not seeing it clearly." "No, that can't be true," John exclaimed, his voice echoing in the empty room. "Stop!" He stood still, shaking, trying to regain control. The pain was sharp, and he wiped away tears in frustration. He walked to the liquor cabinet and poured himself a small glass of scotch, then hesitated and poured it down the sink. That wasn't the answer. He didn't want to follow in his father's footsteps. Entering the bathroom, he washed his face and searched for some of Esther's medication to help her sleep. Holding the vial, he shook his head and put it back. He felt slightly calmer as the shock began to fade and his mind started to clear. "So Jim Moriarty is back, and she never told me. No wonder our marriage has been strained. It's surprising she can manage both her work and our relationship. Esther has always been capable," he thought. "Now what will I do about this? It's clear they've had a connection for months, and they're traveling together for a few days." He managed a bitter laugh. No wonder she's been distant. John knew he couldn't accept the possibility of betrayal. There was no way he could stay married to someone unfaithful. He knew he had to act. Filing for divorce entered his mind. The thought hit him hard. Divorce, such a painful word. He briefly considered counseling, but felt it was too late for that. Perhaps if he had sought help sooner, but now it seemed impossible to save. As he sat, thinking about his uncertain future, his sorrow shifted to a determination that cleared his mind. A sense of bitterness crept in, and he resolved to stop feeling sorry for himself. It was time to take control. The sadness faded, replaced by a tough resolve. He would not be a victim. He needed concrete proof of any betrayal before acting to ensure there were no doubts. A grim smile came to his lips. "There's a cost for betrayal," he muttered as he picked up the phone, feeling fresh tears on his cheeks. "Essie." Stan Hopkins' voice echoed through the nearly empty office. "It's almost 3 o'clock and I need to leave. You're almost done, right?" "A couple more hours, Stan. Jim is finishing the first part of the final draft and I'm close to finishing as well." "Okay, don't forget. Your flight is at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. Your tickets will be at the counter. Get some good rest for your meeting with Simmons. It should go smoothly unless he raises more issues. Say goodbye to Jim for me. See you when you return," Stan said as he left. Leaving tomorrow evening is going to lead to another disagreement with John, she thought, wondering how they could ever move past this. Could they ever return to the love they once had? Esther felt uneasy again. She realized that spending a few nights in a hotel with Jim, even in separate rooms, might be a big mistake if John found out. She thought about whether she should have told her husband that Jim was back at work. Shaking her head, she told herself she had done nothing wrong, but still, anxiety nagged at her. "John, come in and give me your jacket," Irene said when she saw John at her door. "What's going on? You didn't sound like yourself on the phone. Would you like a drink or something?" "Nothing, Irene," John replied. "Thanks for letting me drop by so suddenly. I really need to talk to you." Irene noticed his tired face and red eyes. She sensed something was wrong, but decided to let John speak first. "Okay, John. At least sit down." John went into the small, warm living room filled with sunlight. If he weren't so troubled, he would have appreciated how cozy Irene's home was. He sat down in a chair and glanced up at her with a small smile, feeling grateful to have such a good friend. "I'm sorry for bringing my problems to you, Irene. It seems like you're the only one I can share them with," John said, trying to joke a little. Irene sat and waited. Her open posture encouraged him to share his thoughts. He worried that Esther might be having an affair. "It all makes sense now, Irene. Our marriage has been falling apart lately. Her cold attitude and lack of warmth toward me have been hard to deal with. I can't remember the last time we truly connected. It feels like we've been growing apart." Irene felt sad for him and for Esther. She found it hard to believe that Esther would cheat, knowing how much she cared for John. "John," Irene replied softly, "I understand that hearing about Jim's return has shaken you, but consider this. Perhaps Esther didn't tell you because she thought it would upset you. That could be true, right?" John shook his head. "I've thought about that, but the timing matches too perfectly with the start of our problems. I never doubted her when she said she had to work late or had weekend duties. I tried to be understanding, but those late nights started to strain our marriage. We fought about it, and I warned her that she was focusing too much on her job, but she brushed off my worries." He paused, then added, "Let's be honest, Irene. There's something wrong between us. I need to find out the truth before I decide what to do next." Irene gasped in surprise. "Wait, John. Are you sure you're not jumping to conclusions? You only have suspicions. It doesn't look great, but don't rush to action. Talk to Esther. You know she values honesty." "She's been avoiding me for months. I can't ignore that. Irene, since you have experience in stagecraft, could you help me change my look? I want to watch her without being recognized." Irene chuckled softly to lighten the mood. "John, you're not going to turn into a secret agent overnight. Why not just change a few things about how you look? You never wear hats, so why not get a cap? Maybe some inexpensive glasses. Those small changes will help you blend in." "Good idea, I'll do that. They don't expect to see me there, so I doubt they'll recognize me. Esther is leaving Monday morning. I'll book a flight right after hers." He sighed. "At least I'll be doing something instead of just worrying." Irene felt odd in this role reversal. So often, John and Esther had comforted her after her own relationship troubles. Now she was helping John through his. As John got ready to leave, she hugged him and asked him to keep her updated. He promised to do so and walked to his car. Irene stood at the door for a moment, deep in thought, feeling for her friend. A new thought crept in. John might be planning to separate from Esther. He could be free and single. She scolded herself, reminding herself that she was meant to be their friend, not manipulative. Yet the thought lingered in her mind. "John? John?" Esther called as she entered the house. She saw John coming inside and noticed his tense demeanor. What was happening now? "Please calm down. You sound upset. What's wrong?" Esther took a deep breath, preparing for John's reaction after telling him she would leave Monday night instead of the next morning. "John, I'm leaving Sunday night instead of Monday morning. This project is ending, and once I get the signature, it'll be over. I know we've had issues, but please let me finish this, and I promise things will improve." Esther was clenching her hands, anticipating his angry response. John stood there, trying to control his frustration. "Okay, Esther. I understand," he replied. "No yelling. I get it. You go do what you need to do, and we'll talk when you get back. There's a lot to discuss." John turned and left, getting into his car. He couldn't stand being near her anymore. Esther watched him leave, shocked. He had never walked away from her in anger before. In that moment, she realized their marriage was in serious trouble, and she worried if they could ever find a way back to each other. Underneath her frustration and fear lay a sense of resentment. He should be more understanding and supportive of her job. Later that night, John parked by the river, feeling exhausted in both mind and body. He was tired of worrying about their problems. He had to move on. He entered the quiet, dark house after midnight and went upstairs to the guest room. Too worn out to change, he kicked off his shoes, lay down on the bed, and soon fell into a deep sleep, despite his worries. The next day was cold in the Watson household. John and Esther did their best to stay apart. When the taxi arrived in the late afternoon, Esther grabbed her briefcase and suitcase and left without saying anything to John. He watched as she got into the cab, feeling uncertain about his trip planned for the next day. Her leaving felt like a final goodbye, and he was hesitant about what the future held. The next morning, John seemed quite different. Wearing a Phillies baseball cap, funny glasses, a plaid shirt, and a denim jacket, he looked nothing like the serious academic everyone knew. He was surprised by how different he looked and felt certain that he wouldn't stand out too much. It was past 11 a.m., and he guessed Esther would be out for a while, perhaps until later in the afternoon or evening. He found his spot in the lobby, which had a large, fake palm that somewhat hid him and was in a dimly lit corner. From there, he could see the elevators. As he made his way to his room, he noticed a hotel shop with fresh flowers and decided to go inside. After looking around, he took a business card. Once outside, he stepped into a quiet area and called the florist, ordering a dozen roses for Mrs. Esther Watson, asking for them to be delivered to her room within the hour. Feeling secure in his plan, he returned to the lobby to wait. Soon, he spotted a bellman carrying a vase of red roses heading for the elevator. John followed him inside. The bellman introduced himself as Bill, pressed the button for the 12th floor, and looked at John, who smiled and nodded in response. They exited together, but John hung back for a moment as Bill knocked on a door and used a passkey to enter a room numbered 1212. John smiled to himself and quietly took the stairs to avoid being seen. Around 4 p.m., John was settled in his chosen spot in the lobby, holding a newspaper that he hardly read. As time passed, he kept glancing at the wall clock, aware of every slow tick. Finally, at 6:33, he spotted Esther walking in with a tall, slim man he recognized as James Moriarty. They both looked serious and tense, suggesting that their earlier discussions hadn't gone well. John observed them quietly as Moriarty tried to guide Esther toward the dining room, but she pulled away and headed for the elevators instead. Moriarty followed her, and John watched the numbers flash on the floor indicator. Once they were out of sight, John took a quick break in the hotel coffee shop, where he ate a club sandwich and drank iced tea. He wanted to make sure he didn't miss anything, so he returned to his chair with his newspaper, trying to appear absorbed in it. He stayed there until a little after 11, then went back to his room. His suitcase was still on the bed as he unpacked and prepared for the night. John couldn't stop thinking. Maybe Esther is right, he mused. Maybe I'm imagining things. Their body language seemed professional, with no hints of anything more. Still, he felt uneasy. Could he have been misreading the signs? After changing into his pajamas and lying down, he struggled to find sleep. He needed to think clearly instead of letting emotions cloud his judgment. Let's get through this undercover situation, he told himself, then talk to Esther about my worries without arguing. Every serious conversation they had recently turned into a fight, which he felt was partly his fault. This time, they needed to either solve their problems or face the reality of their relationship. As he lay there, an overwhelming sadness washed over him. Life without Esther wouldn't be as bright, and he would genuinely miss her. He realized he loved her, and that love needed care. Still confused about what came next, he turned over and eventually drifted into an uneasy sleep. When John woke the next morning, it was late, and he felt he hadn't rested well. He hurried through a shower and got dressed before heading to the coffee shop. His appetite was small, so he ordered some toast and coffee, finishing quickly. While he sipped on a second cup, he thought through what had been bothering him. Perhaps his worries about Esther were just that, worries, not based in truth. Feeling a bit ashamed for jumping to conclusions, John decided to stay at the hotel for the 2 nights he had booked. He realized his watchful waiting might not yield any answers. That evening, John returned to his corner in the lobby with a new newspaper, but reading was challenging as he glanced anxiously at the clock. At 7:14, relief washed over him as he spotted Esther again. However, his relief turned to worry as he saw her laughing and chatting happily with Moriarty. They seemed to be enjoying each other's company, and John could see the happiness on Esther's face as they headed into the dining room together, disappearing from view. Esther felt triumphant. She had finally gotten all the necessary signatures for a crucial contract, and it could mean a big opportunity for her career. As she shared her joy with Moriarty, she marveled at the success of their hard work and long hours. She would make sure he got credit for finishing the project. "Essie," Jim said happily, "I can't believe it's finally done. All those months of work, it's almost overwhelming." He waved to the waiter for a bottle of wine to add to their dinner. Esther hesitated, but then thought, why not? We've earned this moment. Dinner was nice, and they took their time. Soon they finished the bottle of wine. The conversation flowed easily, and they felt relaxed, celebrating their success. Esther checked her watch and saw it was almost 9 o'clock. "Okay, Jim, it's getting late, and we have a flight tomorrow. We should wrap this up." Her words were a bit jumbled. "Oh, come on, Essie, late? Don't be silly, it's still early. Let's head to the lounge to unwind a bit. We both need it," Jim insisted. Esther paused and laughed at the playful look on Jim's face. "Why not?" she thought. "It really is early." "Okay, Jim, let me go change out of this suit. I'll be down shortly, but just for one drink, okay?" John watched nervously as Esther walked to the elevators. He felt relieved when he saw her enter the elevator alone. He almost returned to his room but decided to go to the lounge for a drink. He needed to ease the tightness in his chest from seeing Esther and Moriarty together. John picked a seat at the end of the bar and ordered a drink. Looking around, he noticed Moriarty sitting in a corner booth and wondered why he had chosen that spot. John shifted on the stool, trying to remain unnoticed. He glanced at the mirror behind the bar, allowing him to see that side of the lounge without turning around. He sipped his drink, feeling the tension leave his body. He began to believe his fears were unfounded and imagined peaceful apologies that Esther would accept. His eyes drifted back to the mirror and he noticed Moriarty still sitting alone. The lounge felt nearly empty. John checked his watch and saw it was almost 9:30. He started to get up when he felt a tightness in his stomach. Esther entered the lounge, now in a simple white blouse and fitted black skirt. John recognized the outfit and watched as she scanned the room, spotting Moriarty in the booth. He didn't want to look over, but he could see in the mirror as Esther walked toward the booth. "You never wore that for me, did you, Esther?" he thought bitterly. "Just stay there and do what you want. You don't have to worry about being caught now, but stay away until I'm gone. I'll be out in a day or two. Don't come home." John thought dully, "I'm going to file for divorce." He looked at her as she gasped, going pale. "We'll split everything, but you can keep the house. I'll just take my clothes and my work materials, which you often criticized. Everything else we can share. That seems fair." John's face twisted in displeasure. "Don't fight it, Essie. If you do, I'll share what I saw, and that could hurt your career." He held her gaze as he slipped one of her belongings into his pocket, then stood up and walked away. He turned back briefly to see Esther quietly crying before leaving the booth behind. 3 months passed since John moved out. He had started the divorce, and Esther was fighting back hard despite his warning. During that time, John learned something about himself. He realized he couldn't air their private matters. Was it embarrassment or concern for her reputation? It didn't matter. He found he couldn't go through with his threat. His lawyer and friend, Sherwood Holmes, told him Esther would keep fighting unless John agreed to talk with her privately. She felt she deserved to be heard, and if he still wanted the divorce after the talk, she'd drop her fight. "That's the bottom line, John," Holmes said. "You know how Esther is. She can drag this out for ages. If you want the divorce, talk to her. It won't hurt you." John sat silent in Holmes's office. The nice surroundings didn't calm him. He looked out the window at the bare trees and gray sky, then turned back to Holmes and said, "No, I don't want to talk to her. If she wants to fight, let her. I really don't care." Holmes sighed and leaned back in his chair. "John, we've known each other a long time. I'm not just your lawyer, I'm your friend. This will cost you a lot of money. If you want the divorce, sit and listen to her. Then you can move on." John shook his head firmly. "No, Woody. I won't sit with her. I know what she'll say. I could guess what her arguments would be. I don't want to listen to her." "Listen, Woody. I know you're right about the costs. Just tell Esther I won't speak with her. She can do what she likes. I'm not in a hurry to get divorced. It's not that important to me anymore." Holmes shrugged. "Okay, John, I'll let her know. We'll just hold all the paperwork for now, but when you're ready, give me a call for dinner. It's been a long time." John stood up and put a hand on his friend's shoulder. "I'm sorry, Woody. It's been over a year since Mary passed. Here I am putting my problems on you when you're still hurting, too. Of course I'll call you. Give me a few days and let's have dinner. I'd really like that." Holmes smiled and showed John out of the office, shaking his head in sympathy as he watched John walk out into the chilly afternoon. John didn't take long to drive home. He parked and slowly walked through the door of his new townhouse. Glancing around, he took in his space. He had moved in about 6 weeks earlier, spending a lot on paint, new carpets, and furniture. He wanted to start fresh in a nice place. He didn't want to hide away. He wanted to enjoy his new life. He was only 46. There was life after marriage, a marriage he hoped would end one day. He walked around his new place, half-focused while feeling upset about Esther's stubbornness. The living room and dining room were spacious, and the kitchen had nice countertops. There were 2 updated bathrooms, one right off the master bedroom. But what he liked most was a small room with sliding glass doors that led to a modern spa. John smiled as he thought about it. He had spent many hours there, relaxing and relieving the stress that weighed him down. "Honestly, Irene, it's not the end of the world," he shouted. "It's just not working, you know that. It was great, but it's just not working anymore." Irene turned away from her now ex-boyfriend, Tony, as her voice cracked. He stood still for a moment, looking genuinely sorry, then turned and left quietly, closing the door behind him. Irene sighed and fell onto the sofa. Though the tears stopped, a small, wry smile appeared on her face. It wasn't like she truly loved Tony. It disappointed her to keep losing men. "What is wrong with me?" she thought. "Why can't I find someone who can truly love me?" She took a deep breath and headed for the bathroom. After freshening up, she stepped into the shower, letting the hot water wash away some of her tension. After quickly washing herself, she dried off and tossed the towel aside. Reaching for her robe, Irene paused to look at herself in the mirror. She saw a tall, mature woman in her prime. Her dark hair framed her face. Her light skin looked healthy. She looked down and thought, "Not bad." She opened the door, shrugged on her robe, and flopped onto the bed. Picking up a book she had started, she tried to read it, but soon closed it with a sigh. "I need a drink," she said to herself. She got up and went to the kitchen, where a few bottles of whiskey were stored. After pouring a glass of bourbon, she returned to the living room and sank into a chair, sipping her drink and wondering where her life was headed. "Stop feeling sorry for yourself," she muttered. "I need some company. I can't stay here feeling sorry for myself." An idea struck her, and she dialed John's number. "John?" she exclaimed when she heard his voice. "It's Irene. Are you busy? I'd really like to come over." She listened to his reply and smiled. "That's great. I'll see you soon." As darkness fell, Irene pulled into the driveway and quickly got out of her car. She moved to the front door, and before she could ring the bell, John opened it with a warm smile. "Perfect timing. The delivery guy just left, and everything is still hot. Come in. Let's eat." John laughed. "Wow, John, you really know how to make a girl feel special. This is perfect. I didn't even realize I was hungry. Now that you mention it, I'm starving. Lead the way." They chatted happily while enjoying takeout food. Then, tossing the empty containers in the trash, they moved to the living room with the wine John had opened. After filling their glasses, John tossed the empty bottle aside. They continued their cheerful talk until their glasses were empty. John glanced down at the empty glasses before looking at Irene. "All right, let's get serious," he said, standing up to grab a bottle of scotch. He poured 2 glasses over ice and passed one to Irene, sitting across from her in another chair. He looked at her, seeing that she had already had some wine. "Okay, tell me what's bothering you. I'm here to listen," he said gently. Irene laughed and took a sip of her drink. "This is really good. I had no idea you had such good taste in drinks." John sat quietly for a moment, watching her. "Oh no," she said. "You know me better than that. It's Tony. He broke up with me today. What's wrong with me? Why can't I keep a man? You really want to know? If you do, I can tell you. It's not a secret, but are you sure?" Irene was taken aback, sensing irritation growing inside her. "What do you mean? If you knew, why didn't you tell me before?" John raised his hands in defense. "Hold on. Esther never let me say anything. She didn't want to hurt your feelings. I didn't agree with her, but I thought she might have a point. But who cares what she thinks now?" He chuckled lightly. "It's you. You always go for the wrong guys. I tried to hint at it, but you didn't see it. Think about it, none of the guys you brought around were right for you." "I know you care about me, but you're pretty harsh," Irene retorted. "You're a beautiful, smart woman. You can get almost any guy you want, but your choices have led to heartbreak. Think about that." Irene sat silently, a mix of surprise and anger showing in her eyes. After a moment, she realized he was right. "You're right," she whispered. "Why didn't I see that before? Maybe I need to change how I see myself." "No, no, no," John protested as he stood up. "You're not a loser, but talking to someone might help." He chuckled, adding, "Maybe I should too. My mind isn't the clearest these days." They exchanged glances before bursting into laughter. "Boy, are we a pair," Irene said, enjoying her drink. "Well, at least you had almost 20 good years with one woman." Immediately, she covered her mouth, regretful of what she had said. "That's okay, Irene," John replied. "They were good years. That's what makes this so tough. Trust being broken changes everything." "Enough of that. Let's fill up these glasses. I'm glad you came over. Let's share a drink." John smiled. So the friends sat together, chatting and enjoying their drinks just as they had intended. They both knew that drowning their worries in alcohol only made things harder the next day, but right then, they didn't care. "Irene," John said a little unsteady, "you never let me use what's that tub outside?" "The spa?" Irene asked, trying to keep her focus. "Hey, that's a great idea. Let's check it out. Come on." They walked together, laughing all the way. "Ho, no swimsuit," Irene said with some disappointment. "I didn't bring anything." "Let's just go for it. It'll be fun," John laughed. They arrived at the spa that he had kept warm for when he used it. They stood there for a moment, enjoying each other's company. "You know, Ree," John said, coming out of his playful mood, "you look amazing tonight," he chuckled. Irene felt herself blush a bit, but she wasn't embarrassed. "You're not so bad either, Johnny. But what's that thing sticking out?" she pointed. John realized what she meant and laughed, saying, "See, you're not such a meanie after all. Come on, let's get in." And he helped her into the warm, bubbling water. They sat next to each other, enjoying how the water felt. They were aware of how close they were, and John sensed a bit of tension in the air. The whiskey muddled his mind, but he knew he needed to be careful. He didn't want to ruin Irene's friendship because of a mistaken move. Irene felt a bit of excitement. Seeing the change in John's mood gave her a thrill. She thought, "Looks like you're still charming," and wondered what to do next. Should I make a move, or will he? Will he be upset? Oh well, why not? She finally decided, shifting to sit a little closer. John noticed when Irene moved closer to him. He leaned back and sighed as the moment grew deeper. He felt a wave of emotion wash over him, surprising them both. Irene smiled gently, sensing his vulnerability. "Johnny, it seems you needed that," she said softly, noticing his troubled heart. "I see you're going through a lot." Feeling the need to show his appreciation, John turned to Irene and hugged her gently, overwhelmed. As he sat back, he looked into her eyes and smiled. "You're right. I really did need that. I've been carrying a lot lately." He pulled back a little, trying to collect himself, but the feelings were still strong. He splashed some water on his face to clear his mind. I'm so sorry, Irene. I didn't mean to let everything come out like that, he said, taking a moment to gather himself. Irene helped him out of the spa and into a fluffy robe nearby. She led him to the bedroom, where he soon fell asleep. Realizing she couldn't drive, Irene settled into another bedroom, trying to sleep but finding it difficult. At that moment, she understood that John was not ready for more, even though he was separated from Esther. Deep down, she knew they shared a strong friendship, but it wasn't the romantic love she may have wished for. A few tears fell, not because of her own feelings, but from feeling sorry for John's sadness. The sad truth was that he still had feelings for Esther, and that would trouble him for a while. Irene, I know I made mistakes that hurt John, but he thinks I've been untrue, and I need him to see that isn't true. I have to show him that what he saw was just a mistake, Esther said tiredly. The last few months had been hard on her. She had lost weight and looked worn out, with little energy. Irene visited Esther, knowing John was struggling, and confirmed that Esther was too. I understand, Esther, but John refuses to see or talk to you. I've never seen him so set in his ways, Irene replied sympathetically. I think I hurt him deeply, Esther whispered. I think I hurt him so badly that he can't even face me. And I can't blame him, she said with tears in her eyes. Sorry, every time I think I've shed all my tears, I start again. Standing up, Esther pleaded, Renee, can you please stay with me for a while? I need to do something and I really could use your support. Of course, I'll be happy to stay. I just wish there was more I could do, Irene replied. Esther glanced at her watch and turned to the phone, saying, I hope he's still in his office, as she dialed. Woody? Hi, this is Esther. Yes, I'm fine. Woody, could I ask a favor? Can I come see you in the morning? Yes. I've decided to give John what he wants. No conditions. Yes. Okay, thanks. Esther turned to her friend and said, Irene, I'm going to give John the divorce. I know he's not going to see me or talk to me. I'm just kidding myself. He deserves some closure, and I'm going to give him what he wants. That's the least I can do, she said, her voice shaking. Irene looked worried. Esther, wait. This doesn't make sense. I know you both care about each other, and I can't believe there's no way to work this out. Let me talk to John again. Maybe I can help him see reason, she pleaded. Esther shook her head. No, John needs to move on. Fighting the divorce isn't fair to him. He's made it clear that our marriage is over, and I can only blame myself. I was foolish, and this is the result. I won't kid myself any longer, she said, her voice getting stronger but then becoming uncertain. But please, Renee, just stay with me for a while. I really need your support, Esther begged. Of course, I'll stay as long as you want me, Irene reassured her, taking her hands, which felt cold. What? Say that again. Esther's not going to fight the divorce? John Watson stood there, stunned by the news he'd just got from his lawyer. Woody, what's happening? She must be trying to play a trick. We both know Esther doesn't give in so easily. Okay, Woody. Let her come and we'll see if she really goes through with it. I'm not holding my breath, though. Dinner? Sure. Good idea, Woody. Yeah, I know where that is. I'll meet you there around 7 o'clock, okay? Good. See you then. John walked around his home, distracted by what he had just learned. He felt conflicted and didn't understand why. He should feel satisfied, happy that he was getting what he wanted. So why did he feel uneasy? This is what he wanted, right? There wasn't another option, was there? He kept walking through the living room to the kitchen, then back to the living room, pausing at the spa space, then moving into the bedroom, and finally sinking into a chair in the living room. What's wrong with me? He murmured. I'm getting what I want. I need a beer, he said, and went to the kitchen to grab a cold one from the fridge. He lifted the bottle to his mouth, startled by the ringing of the phone. Hello? Oh, hi, Renee. What's up? Forget it. Oh, sure. I'm meeting Woody this evening, but you can join us. You know who he is, Irene. No, I mean it. I'll call him and let him know you're joining us. You two should meet anyway. I'll pick you up around 6:30. Let's go together, and Renee, please stop nagging, all right? Yeah, I know I can be hard on people. See you tonight. Bye. Later that evening, John and Irene arrived at the restaurant and walked over to the table where Woody Holmes was already sitting. John's mind was still occupied with thoughts of his upcoming divorce, so he introduced his friends in a hurry. Suddenly he noticed that there was a silence and looked at his friends who were still standing next to the table. Irene was blushing, and Woody was holding her hand, looking like he wanted to keep it that way. "Hey, you two," John laughed. "You look like teenagers on a first date. I take it you like each other?" Woody turned red and quickly let go of Irene's hand. Sorry about that. Irene, still blushing, laughed a bit nervously and quickly sat down. "Wow, did you hear bells or something? If I had known, I would have introduced you two long ago," John chuckled. "Enough, Johnny. You're embarrassing both Woody and me," Irene said, but she had a small smile on her face. It was an interesting evening, mainly because they didn't talk much about what was bothering John. They agreed that they would have to wait until Esther signed the divorce papers before knowing what was going on. Any guesses before that would be pointless. The dinner conversation centered on Woody and Irene, making John feel a bit out of place. But he didn't mind. He sat with a subtle smile, watching his friends connect more and more. Their attraction was clear, and John thought this meeting could be very good for both of them. Maybe Woody found someone who could help him through his loss. And maybe Irene found a decent guy this time. After dinner, John excused himself and went to the restroom. Once done, he washed his hands and headed back to his table. He looked at his friends curiously as Woody started to stutter a bit. John, look," he stammered, turning red again. "I hope that this is—" "Oh, for goodness sake," Irene interrupted. "John, Woody would like to drive me home. I hope that's okay with you," she said quickly, her cheeks a little red. "Well, I'm not sure about that," John teased. "After all, I picked you up." "John," Irene warned. He laughed and smiled at his friends. "Of course, I won't mind at all." As they spoke, Esther came in and Woody greeted her. "It's nice to see you again, even in such a tough situation," he said gently. "Please, have a seat." "Thank you, Woody. I know this is hard for me. Let's get this done as soon as we can. I understand John's choice to avoid me," Esther said. Woody watched her and noticed how tired she looked. He sighed, realizing how difficult this was for her. "I'm really sorry, Es. I tried to change John's mind, but you know how stubborn he can be. I'm glad you're not arguing about this. It's best for both of you." Esther nodded and asked for the paperwork. Woody handed her the documents, and she signed them without reading. This surprised him. "Es, aren't you going to read this?" "What for, Woody? I trust you. You know what to do. And John is fair. He will treat me right," she replied softly, blushing a little. "Listen, I know you're struggling with this. You signed without conditions, and I will talk to John again. I think now he might be open to speaking with you." Esther shrugged. "I'll be fine if he doesn't change his mind. I messed up my marriage, and I can only blame myself. I wanted us to stay friends, but—" She paused, tears welling in her eyes. "Sorry, Woody, I need to pull myself together," she whispered, standing up. "Forgive me, I need to go." And she hurried out, leaving Woody to shake his head in concern. Woody sat down and thought for a moment. He picked up the phone. "Hello? Renee?" "Yeah, it's me. Esther just left my office, and I'm really worried about her. She signed the divorce papers without reading them. Yeah, surprised isn't the word. I know how close you are to John. Can you meet with him and let him know it's over? That Esther signed without even checking the terms? We can make him feel a little guilty about avoiding her." Woody chuckled. "Yeah, we are meddling, but it's for a good reason. I'm glad you agree. Once John calms down, he'll be reasonable. We both know he needs to talk to Esther, and I think he will." John Watson stood at the front door of the home he used to share with Esther, feeling nervous. He felt tightness in his throat and sweat on his brow despite the cool weather. He hesitated, wondering whether giving in to Irene and Woody's advice was smart. He didn't want to open old wounds. He remembered his last argument with Irene about Esther and her choices. "That doesn't make sense, Irene," John had said, frustrated. "You're saying she just forgot about me because someone else was nearby?" Irene replied sharply, "Stop it, John. You know that's not what I mean." After calming down, Renee had convinced John to meet with Esther. But now, when the door opened and he saw Esther framed by the light behind her, he hesitated again. "John? Please come in," she urged. John straightened, forced a smile, and said, "Okay, thanks, Esther," as he stepped into what once was his home. Inside, he noticed the place was unchanged, but gathering some dust, which surprised him. Esther usually kept everything tidy, but he kept quiet. "Thank you for meeting with me," Esther said softly. "I appreciate it and promise I won't take up too much of your time." "Okay, Esther. Woody and Irene persuaded me to see you. I really don't understand how this will help anyone, but since you're not fighting the divorce, I went along with it," John said, his voice flat and cold. Esther took a deep breath, knowing this would not be easy. She needed to tell John the truth and admit her mistakes, hoping he would forgive her. She felt that his forgiveness would help her feel better. "John, please just listen. Listening will help me," Esther pleaded, her eyes wide with hope. John paused and looked at her closely before sitting stiffly in a chair. "Okay, Esther, I'm listening," he replied. Esther took a deep breath and began. "John, if you believe nothing else, please believe me when I say I have never been unfaithful to you and I never meant to be. I know that what you saw that night looks different, but it's the truth." John interrupted. "Esther, the truth is rarely simple." She blushed slightly and asked him to keep listening. "I wish I could explain why I acted that way. I've hurt myself, thinking about why I let it happen. I have no excuses for my behavior. In those moments, I was someone I regret." "I wish I had an easy answer for you," she continued, tears rolling down her face. "The only reasons I found were tied to how relieved I felt when I finished the contract and how much I had to drink." John sat quietly, feeling a mix of emotions as she mentioned that night. Despite everything, he believed her when she said she was faithful, but that belief only added to his inner conflict. "I also have to admit I was upset with you. I felt you should have been more supportive. I know that wasn't fair, but that's how I felt at the time." "I see now how silly that sounds," she said, pausing to reach for a tissue. "I'm sorry for the tears, John. I promised myself I wouldn't cry, but it seems I broke that promise too." Looking at him with hopeful eyes, she asked, "John, is there any way we can work through this? Counseling? Anything a way to save our marriage?" John looked at her, sighed, and reclined in the chair, staring at his wife with deep sadness. "Esther, let me ask you this. If I hadn't interrupted your conversation that night, can you truly say you wouldn't have let things go further?" Esther gasped, realizing the truth in his question. She knew that, under those circumstances, she might have allowed things to get more serious. Her face went pale as she understood what he was suggesting. John waved his hand dismissively. "You see, Esther, that's the issue. You betrayed our marriage when you let him get too close. You betrayed our marriage when you showed him kindness. You broke the promise you made to me, your husband, to be faithful." John's voice rose, but he took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. He didn't want this discussion to turn into an argument. "Do you understand what I'm saying, Esther?" The question was rhetorical. She understood perfectly now. For some reason, she had never thought about what might happen that night. Now, it was painfully clear to her. She couldn't deny it. John was right. She felt a wave of sickness and hopelessness. Esther sat there, shaking her head, tears filling her eyes again. John looked at her with sympathy. "I feel sorry for you, Essie," he continued softly. "I feel sorry for both of us. Maybe you're not entirely to blame. I know I have some responsibility, too. Perhaps I could have been more supportive. But that doesn't change what happened. Now I have to ask myself something that's both simple and complicated. What would be easier for me? Would it be easier to live with doubt or regret? Can I move past this and continue our marriage? Can I spend my life worried that you might betray me again? Or can I live without you, regretting that our marriage didn't last? The regret that you didn't love me enough to stay true. The regret that I wasn't enough for you. The regret that, while I can forgive you, I just can't forget." John paused, feeling his own eyes start to wet. "I'm sorry, Essie. I just can't live with suspicion. Regret is easier." John stood up, paused for a moment, his heart heavy for his wife who sat on the sofa crying. He turned and slowly walked out the door into the night.